Isn't that amazing?
We're gonna actually bunch up
So many times they just walk right on each other.
Wow. All that. They intentionally do that as part of a trail.
It's called a ritual trail,
Mhm.
or like bear stairs sometimes.
Mhm.
They come back and forth and right on top. And it's marking so other bears can see it. Yeah.
Okay, come on,
Get the smell out of it. Be very cautious not to disturb the trail for other people that want to take pictures.
Mike, can you actually squeeze in so we can just keep making room? We want to look
There's a
at
bear.
this and we want to look at the trail.
Huh?
Okay, so first things first, we'll cover two things. First off, this is beautiful, right?
This is beautiful.
Super beautiful.
It doesn't.
What's
Go
really
very
cool
well.
about these desert canyons, I've been in places in New Mexico and in Colorado in these desert canyons where they're doing these trails, and sometimes they'll be a half a mile long up a little canyon, which is just super cool. Really beautiful, and it's kind of fun, you know. In rainforest,
Yeah.
they'll make these, but it can grow back so fast that they can kind of fade out. They ghost out pretty quickly. But then there's the ones that they hit, you know, that are being hit every year that wear in. This is one of those here, you know, where at least this year, this was a big area for this bear, or perhaps even multiple bears. But what I do want to talk about to tie it back in, this is what we were looking at back there, right?
Yeah.
So the question here is, you know, bears don't have to do this,
No.
but they do it. And so, and this is where, if for those of you that said bear trail, we want to make a distinction here. Even when these are super long, there's going, like, a lot of times, and this is kind of tough because it was soft, but this isn't just because a bear was pushing on it and it was sinking down. What's the motion? It's a twist, okay? So there's an actual, because bears don't just do that. They do have a little bit of twist in their walk, but everywhere they're walking, they're not just totally twisting the ground. They do it very specifically in these areas, and for what purpose? Scent
marking.
And so what I want folks to be recognizing in these particular stretches of bear activity on planet Earth is that there is an actual communication here, there is an actual behavior here other than walking. And so for those of you that said bear trail, I just leave it to you. If you were thinking this is a bear trail, but they are actually doing something specific and marking, great, come tell me and we will fill out the rest of that answer. If that was not really in your radar, it was just a bear walking back and forth, and that's just what bear trails are, then I'll leave it to you as well to say, I didn't know what this sign was. Okay? So that's where this, I'll trust you guys, don't worry about it. But what we're really looking for here when we see this is not just a bare foot, and it's not just many bare feet. This is a bear doing something. It's focused, it's actually a focused thing. And granted, they can just kind of beat it in over time. And you know, you're seeing some of that here, but they also know what this is. Like when a bear just goes up a big hill, it just goes up a big hill. If another bear walks in there, it's going to look at this and it knows what that means, and it knows what it's going to be able to tell about another bear. It can see it, you know? Well, I don't know how well they see it. Anyways.
Does a bear habitually, if it encounters another bear's fresh trail, does it habitually do that?
They could, yeah, you could get over marking, you could just get adding to it. It doesn't necessarily have to be one bear.
You're right, and is it not necessarily a dominance thing or anything?
I mean, maybe, I don't know. Here's the
Right.
thing with a ton of stuff about marking, and Jonah can, I'm sure a lot of folks, but Jonah might be able to contribute to this too, is that there are a lot of things we know that they could be doing, but there's a lot of stuff about marking behavior that
We just don't know.
It's beyond us. We have no idea what they're all.
I know in Cape Ann, there actually is a lot of territorial stuff, like when there's a spot with a bunch of oak trees, a big dominant male will go hang out there, and it's off limits. Like the other bears don't get to go there and they try to sneak in and stuff, but they'll be pretty aggressive about that at times. So,
Sure. Yep. Yeah, and that's usually food related. But,
yeah.
like
And
with,
a lot of times I think these are too. When you start getting places where there's like a ton of markings, I think oftentimes it's like it's marking this little freaking awesome honey hole that it's got down here.
yep, exactly. And females will do it in different areas than males tend to do it in. But regardless, and yeah, you would see the same thing with good fishing spots, things like that. But as opposed to, you know, they'll still all be, you might see a ton of bears in one area and they share that entire region, but they have a good honey hole. They've got the good fishing spot,
And
and
it's
that,
very time sensitive there too. Like
exactly.
it'll be that big bear's in there for 2 weeks or 3 weeks while the
Right.
while the acorns are going nuts, and then when they're done, going nuts, acorns are nuts. But anyway, when they're done eating all that and they've whatever, they're gone and everyone else is allowed back in. So it's not like a permanent like defended territory. It's more like keep my little spot.
Yep.
Fine.
Can you guys speak to direction? Does this bear move back and forth?
back and forth. And what's so cool is it just lines up. You know, on one way its right foot is there, on the way back its left foot is there. And they just carefully step right back down in the same spots, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So it's kind of cool to think this season, how many times did this bear stand here, or did this bear pass through? It's kind of fun to think about that and be like, was that like 58 passing, or was it 100, or was it 25? I don't know. It's kind of cool to think about. How many times that barefoot was there? What's that?
Did we talk about the bed earlier?
That's what we're doing right now.
Okay.
So, what's this? Bear bed. This is a bear bed, okay? And so, this is one of those that if we need to, basically everybody said bear bed back there. And why did you say bear bed back there?
I actually said deer bed.
I said deer bed.
Yeah,
as
we had
well.
we had 2 deer beds, but everybody else said bear bed.
Because there was bear poop on it, and it was oval and large and heavy, and
Okay, so we had a worn-in spot. This one's a little bit deeper, but we had a worn-in spot there, and we can actually talk about a few things. For one, that little location, you know, you've got these little benches, and then there was these big trees right up on a slope. That is a spot to go. That's what we did. Let's go look for a bear bed there. Boom, there's a bear bed there. And so, you know, now, could that be a deer bed spot? Sure. But one of the things we're looking at was we're looking at this more, I mean, it's a big area, you know, it was this big around,
It's
and
definitely
it's,
full of deer scat.
Yeah, that was the other thing.
sure. So deer scats, fine, that's great. Not to say too that, again, deer and bears won't pick spots on the landscape that are good for bedding, and a bear couldn't even lay where a deer was, or vice versa. That can happen.
And there was some deer track in there too.
Yep, there was, and there was also some squirrel digs.
right next to the
Yep.
one that was marked. And
The
I
other
think that
one
might
looked
actually
more
be deer bed.
Yep,
Yeah.
that one looked more like a deer bed.
Yeah, that's
was-
totally
I
what
found
I was
bears
queuing
in
in on.
Okay,
Yeah.
so, and I figured this would happen. I'll offer my 2 cents on those. Could have, you know, I think a deer could have laid there. But when we're looking at it entirely in its context, what we have is a larger area on the far side of a tree on a little slope where there's all this bear passing, eating, and resting area. It's big and it's round and it's bowled out in a way that's slightly different than you get from your deer that are usually just laying down on the surface, right? The other thing is that just below it, we had this massive amount of bear scat, which was a weird spot for a bear just to be walking through and shitting, not only once, but maybe twice or maybe even 3 times. How many scats is this?
4.
Right. And why are there that many scats right there? Because the bed. They literally will stand up and just shit out the back of their bed. Okay? And when they're really worn in, they'll make a ring of it. But a lot of times it's on a they're like, oh, it doesn't want to shit up here because the shit's going to roll back into its bed. And so it literally is just laying, it's keeping cool, and they stand up and they shit. We had the exact same thing down there. Whether or not there was a deer or not in that bed, that a bear rested there. The bulk of that sign that we were looking at was made by a black bear. Okay? And that's one of those things, this is that stuff that we need to be able to think through. It just, that's a bear bed down there. No matter what happened beyond it or before it, a bear spent time there sleeping and shitting.
And do you think both of those were bear beds?
I'm not exactly sure. I think that the one that I asked was much clearer than the other one that was there.
Okay, gotcha. I read it as both of those are a part of the question.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, we can take that. That's fair. That's totally fair. But you know,
I hear you.
from here on out, that's kind of the sum of this. This is the way we want to be looking at this. This is that collection of signs, so that we're understanding it to the point where we want to be able to look on the landscape and find those things. You know, and then walk to them and say, oh yeah, oh there was a bear here and it was sleeping. Oh look, some other shit may have happened here too. But we want to be able to see it subtler and subtler layers that there was a bear sleeping there, and that's what was happening down there. And this was just a great way to cap that off by seeing another example of it here and in a spot that is very rich.
Kate, I'd like to add one thing too.
Yep, take it away.
One of the things I find that's a really helpful exercise to finding holes in our knowledge is to with each species try to make sure that you know like the full gamut of sign that you're finding in your area for that. So every species poops, right? And then there's a whole wide variety of feeding sign, bedding sign, different things that are associated with the behavior of that species' life. And it's cool for this bear right here, we can see a whole lot of it. I guess we haven't found any feeding sign yet, but we can tell what they're eating by looking at their scats. And we can recognize their scats, we're recognizing marking behaviors, we're finding beds. And the neat thing for me is recognizing holes. Like if I try to say, what do possum beds look like? Or something like that. Or I mean, well, I think they roost mostly in hollow trees, or rest in hollow trees mostly, but what about possum scat? Like there's some weird things, like common species that we never see, that always haunt me.
Yeah.
And I think those are kind of, it helps a lot to kind of think about that. You go through each animal in your area and say, do I know the signs? Do I know the marking behavior and scent marking stuff, territorial stuff? Do I know the tracks and everything else? So anyway, I think it's cool here because just during this eval, we've almost covered that a really wide gamut, I guess, with bears. From the tracks and some of the behavior stuff and all this sign, we've almost done a full spectrum cover of bear natural history through their tracks and sign.
Do you have any ideas why you never see possum scat? That one haunts me too.
I know.
I think
don't understand.
I think they shit in dens and stuff. This possum scat that I've seen was in an attic.
I've seen it with captive possums. That's the only way to
So these, some of these are Manzanita bears, huh?
That's what I was thinking, but they all seem a little small.
But some of these have to be juniper bears too, right? I can't.
I'm looking.
I don't know Manzanita berries, so all of a sudden I'm totally shaken.
Well, Manzanita bears are usually a little bigger and rounder.
Kind of a reddish color. It's sort of like
And there's a
So
bunch
it's
of
like,
manzanita
do we have
trees.
juniper? Quite a bit of juniper around, or no?
I haven't seen
In the high country?
There's a bunch of, there's juniper in Kuyama, but I've seen only manzanita up around here.
Do they? Does
Manzanita.
Bears do eat manzanita.
do manzanita have a junipery smell? Because these definitely have a
No,
cypressy.
really.
They're kind of, yeah,
Okay, I think
soury
I think
after.
Maybe
A good
it's
bit
fall.
of this is juniper.
It could
I
be
mean, it
fall.
looks exactly like juniper. This stuff does. These little purple ones.
Yeah, purple.
and I mean, it smells like juniper.
Yeah, actually that looks like juniper and this looks like manzanita.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah,
cool.
because there's pits still.
That's pretty cool.
Oh yeah, I think that might be a juniper.
Yeah, that's
pit
juniper.
and then-
And manzanita. All right, I need to learn manzanita berries.
Yeah, they love
Like a
manzanita.
part of it.
Just to bring it back to, and not to single out the deer bed camp, but I think it is.
I'm not arguing, and I totally see that.
No, totally.
Yeah.
I just was going to add too that
That might be
for me, it's much more exciting to see a bear bed than it is a deer bed, and so that's I want to be able to pull that out instead of being like, oh, a deer was here. I want to know that there was a bear sleeping there, you know. And so it's just one of those things.